This is AfroEconomics Live, and I am Bryan, the creator of AfroEconomics and the president and chief investment officer of Bryan Financial Group, a registered investment advisory firm that I was blessed with the opportunity to start in 1995, celebrating 25 years of service to Black investors. Make sure you come out to the AfroEconomics Fest. Go to the website, AfroEconomics.com. Click on the AfroEconomics Fest. It is priceless, meaning it's absolutely free for you to attend. And we're having a members luncheon to kick it all off. So make sure that you take advantage of membership opportunities, because it is members that make the fest possible. It is the members and clients that make it all possible, because you believed this is why we're able to do this for one another. I believe that we should invest in each other, believe in each other, build our community, and have opportunities for us to get to know each other. So this fest is for us to get to know each other and celebrate our 25 years together. So tonight is interesting because I want to talk about the wealth gap, but the wealth gap from the perspective of where did it come from? Because we're always told like Black wealth is 1/10 of the dollar of white wealth, and there's no power there. So I want to focus, like we always do, on empowerment. And information is power. So because I think that we need to have an understanding of our history as Black people in America, and knowing that our history goes far beyond the United States, but our history in the United States of America. So by 1860, America had 4 million slaves, worth a total of $3 billion of the day's currency. So Blight, a man named David Blight, has written that the total value of all slaves combined as property in 1860 was greater than the value of every bank, every factory, and every railroad in the US. Every one of them all together, the value of slaves was higher. So by 1860, America had 4 million slaves, worth that $3 billion. As a result, there were more millionaires in Mississippi Valley, and which is now the poorest part of America. At that time, there were more millionaires in Mississippi Valley than anywhere else in the nation because of the value of our ancestors. Throughout this 246 years, when slavery was an institution in the United States, the forced free labor extracted from enslaved men, women, and children allowed white slave owners to accumulate massive amounts of wealth that we don't think about. It is not often that we actually take the time to think about the free labor and what that meant to the wealth building potential of white slave owners and what it has cost us as a people. Another fact that I didn't know as I was thinking about wealth and Black history and going back to our beginning of our horrible experience here in America, that reparations for slavery have already been paid. And I found this in study. It said reparations were paid to slave owners, not to slaves. On April 16th, in 1862, more than 8 months before Lincoln actually did the Emancipation Proclamation, Abraham Lincoln signed a bill that ended slavery in DC, in the District of Columbia. It provided for immediate emancipation of slaves and compensation to slave owners that were loyal to the Union of up to $300 for each freed slave. $300. And seriously, People, I see like promotions or people are giving out $300 today and people get excited about $300 today. So could you imagine getting $300 for every slave that you had? So over the next 9 months, the Board of Commissioners appointed to administer the act approved petitions to pay this money out completely and in part from former owners for the freedom of. So they basically appointed a commission to make sure that this money was given back to these slave owners in the District of Columbia and to free 2,989 former slaves. But the money wasn't given to the slaves. The money was given to the slave owners. Lincoln's administration paid about $1 million to slave owners in DC for the loss of property. We need to know. So why is the wealth gap so huge? You know, think about how many people were just here who had worked a whole life and had absolutely nothing upon what was called freedom. So why is the wealth gap so huge? Even as our income is growing, our wealth is not as a people. So we're making more and more money, but our wealth is not. Well, it turns out that the government has played a central role. According to research, the United States government throughout history has countless specific laws, policies, rules, and court decisions that have made it more difficult for us to build wealth. And for many of our ancestors, the government transferred wealth that our ancestors actually owned and transferred it over to whites unapologetically. More than 50 years ago at the March on Washington, Dr. Martin Luther King began his speech, I Have a Dream. And he talked about the economic state of our Black community from the beginning. King said, we are living in the lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. Dr. King said that America has defaulted on its foundational promissory note of opportunity when it comes to its citizens of color, writing checks to Black families that had been returned as having insufficient funds, unquote. Now, more than 50 years after King said those words on racial economic injustice, they still hold true today, despite the poverty that many of us have made since 1963. Our economic problems still exist and are undoubtedly having an economic impact on all of America because Black wealth matters. So, in summary, look at these. From America's earliest years of European settlement until the 1860s, Black people were considered assets from their owners, bought and sold, and the owners created more wealth from their slaves' children even. So slaves and their labor was the basis of wealth creation for the plantation owner. Slaves and their labor was the basis of wealth creation for the people who owned and operated the slave ships. Slaves and their labor was the basis of wealth creation for the companies that insured the slaves and insured the slave ships. And by the end of the Civil War in 1865, they had the Freedmen's Bureau, and the occupying Union Army was told to distribute land to the ex-slaves, that 40 acres and a mule that we've heard about. Well, the Freedmen's Bureau was broken apart after 7 years, and most of the land of the slaves was returned to the former white landowner. So the 40 acres and a mule, they were told they had to give it back. And the slaves became sharecroppers, which was basically creating perpetual debt, indebtedness. They were constantly trying to pay for this land that they had been promised that they would be given. They did not win. So on May 20th, 1862, there was the creation of something called the Homestead Act. And it accelerated the settlement of the Western Territory by granting adult heads of families 160 acres of land, public land, for a minimal filing fee and 5 years of continuous residence on that land, as long as you move out west. So I will share more on the details, but remember that Homestead Act and think about, did we benefit from it? So in 1883, we lost the right to actually protect ourselves. The Supreme Court overturned the Civil Rights Act of 1875. They overturned it in 1883. In 1875, they said blacks have the right to protect themselves and their property. In 1883, they said, nah. So how am I going to go out here and get this new land, but I can't even protect myself? And by the 1900s, Southern states passed laws that kept African Americans separate and unequal. The 1900s. So in this attempt to, after the war, get everything right, and the Reconstruction, and we're going to give you land and this and that, they started creating laws that said, nah, you can't protect yourself, and no, we want our land back. And some African American families and communities have prospered. Yes, we have, in spite of all of this. But they were homes destroyed, businesses, people lynched, raped, and an African American business district. We know about this, the Black Wall Street. That's just an example. On June 21st, 1921, white rioters destroyed over 600 Black businesses. So look at these legal moves that have hurt our wealth. Denial of Social Security to farmers and domestic workers in 1935. The groundwork for the nation's Social Security infrastructure was laid with the passage of the Social Security Act in 1935. But despite how important it was, the Social Security Act of 1935 decided to exclude a third of all American workers, including farmers and domestic workers, who were predominantly Black people. They cannot be covered by Social Security. And the cost of excluding Blacks from the Social Security Act of 1935 resulted in a loss of $143 billion in 2016, adjusting it in 2016 dollars. $143 billion of benefits. And you think that doesn't impact your children's children? That doesn't impact your ability to pay your bills and keep your land and send your kids and get them educated? You couldn't get any benefits. So because they excluded farm workers and domestic people. Almost all of us have family members that were farm workers or maids. So let's go back to this Homestead Act of 1862. It accelerated the settlement of the Western Territory. Remember, by saying that families can have 160 acres if you go out there and you get it and you stay there 5 years. So approximately 270 million acres, or 10% of all the land in the United States, was given away to over 1.6 million homesteaders, they're called. So research says that 46 million adults, or 20% of the US population today, can potentially trace their family's history to the building of wealth from that one public policy. 20% of the white people that we know today. And despite the impact of the Homestead Act and the fact that it allowed for any adult, including Black people, to claim that land, there were over and over Black people were ran off by legal obstacles, by threatening their life or burning it down. They could not claim ownership of the land. So the Homestead Act, even though you did have some Black communities that became fairly successful, that opportunity did not help us. And we have to also make note that the Homestead Act was made possible by stealing the land from the Native Americans. So let's look at federally sanctioned housing discrimination. So from 1934 to 1938, the Federal Housing Administration, the FHA, along with other public and private sectors like the Federal Home Owners Loan Corporation, intentionally, this is how it reads, intentionally shut us out from the opportunity to purchase a home through the practice of redlining. Despite their goal of making home ownership accessible to more American households, the underwriting, meaning the loan process, implemented during those first 35 years. That's coming up to like when you were born. Resulted in home buyers, and some of you, you know this. This is, our parents were impacted by this. Receiving just, it said that Black people received just 2% of the government-backed mortgages issued over that period of time. Well, I mean, we're coming up to the 1970s where they decided to make these changes. The practice of being denied access to traditional credit pushed many would-be home buyers into wealth-stripping land contracts, a predatory and costly arrangement in which buyers paid, Black people paid an extreme price to purchase a home, in which a missed payment would lead to an eviction from the home and loss of all of your equity. Prosperity Now research says the practice of land contracts led Black families to pay an average of $20,000 more for their homes than the prices paid for by white families, ultimately stripping more than $500 million in wealth, about $3 billion in 2017 dollars, if you adjust it, from families of color over a 30-year period. That's a lot of wealth. Ultimately, that practice not only set the stage for home ownership to become the largest driver of the racial wealth divide, this is according to Prosperity Now, but it also shaped literally the communities in which most Black people live today. They said because they kind of said we can only live in certain areas. So they kind of closed us in and said, well, okay, we'll help you finance over there, but not over there. Oh my goodness. I mean, this is amazing if you think about it. But I also think that even though there's not a lot of information on it, except for when it comes to veterans, that I think a large amount of the wealth divide is because we're less likely to be business owners also. So it was this hard to get mortgage loans that are fully collateralized. Imagine how impossible it was for a Black person to get a business loan. Even me, I started my business with no loan. It wasn't anything out there for me to get a loan for. And I had 2 degrees. That it just doesn't, there is no special program, not then or not now, to help us build wealth. And then Black veterans, there was a denial of economic opportunities for service members of color. The GI Bill of 1944 was designed to provide millions of returning World War II veterans with the opportunity to do wealth building. They wanted them to help them buy home mortgages, low interest rate mortgages, low interest rate business loans, and they wanted to help them go back to school, tuition assistance. But the bill did not include any discrimination in the language. It didn't say you can't give these to Black soldiers that are coming home. But it delegated the authority to the states, and they didn't oversee it fairly. So the result was racial discrimination on the service members that were Black, and they were more likely to be denied access to those benefits that were designed to help them get into the middle class upon returning from serving their country. So just like with redlining, discriminatory lending practices with the service members, it was prevalent, and it was leaving the veterans to face racially biased situations for money that was set aside for them. So because they weren't told about the benefits, or the banks weren't as willing to extend credit to them in general, even though the federal guidelines was this is for the Black veterans, they did not get the benefit of it. There was an example that I read that said 3 years into the administration of this GI Bill of 1944, a survey was done, and the Mississippi cities found that a survey was done that Black service members received only two loans out of 3,229 loans from the Department of Veterans Affairs to support their home ownership, business, or farming. 2. That's sad. So when we think about it, what do you feel like I'm just going to share my opinion. What I feel still is going on today that's harming our wealth. I feel that policies that harm our wealth that exists today is the lack of political interest in making sure that our young people are being prepared to enter the workforce. But I believe that we're depending too much on traditional college as a way to wealth. And I believe that we need to bring skills and technical training into the Black community, because I feel that skills and technical training will lead to more entrepreneurship, which will lead to opportunities to have more jobs, and we'll have skilled jobs. Even if we do go to work for someone else, you'll have a job that's skilled labor will be a more secure job and a much higher paying job. I believe that minimum wage is still low because it dominates us. Just like you can easily do something that's discriminatory, like you can say farmers, and you could say domestic laborers, and you know that the majority of domestic laborers are Black people, then if you say they cannot be included, you're saying I don't want them included. Even if you don't say it's not racially biased, you're being racially biased. So when minimum wage, who does it impact the most? So there are moves that are made that impact us the most, like the predatory lending environment that impacted us the most, that brought the wealth gap even larger, because we're more likely to not have the income that can support having the debt that is basically made as a part of life. I mean, I would love to see the numbers on the number of Black people who are getting their education, but the education loan has actually destroyed their credit, which means you're going to pay more for everything that you need to finance. So I believe that we need to make sure that we get our voice out there as a people. That's why I believe that AfroEconomics is important, and for us to build this and develop this as a political voice to say that minimum wage needs to be much higher, that we need to have more affordable housing, we need to have more technical training and good schools, we need to have a more business incentive to keep more jobs in highly populated, Black populated areas. Because if your businesses are moving away from where we live, then we don't have a way to get to the jobs. We need to have our jobs in our community. We need to have industries in our community. We need to have training in our communities. So how do we recover? We know that we have been discriminated since our beginning of our time in the country. And we're dealing with that because it has impacted our generational wealth. So many of us have started our careers without a legacy. So that's why you will see the statistics, and you can make the same income as someone else that may be white, but that white person is much more likely to have twice the wealth that you have, or a lot more wealth, meaning your assets minus your liabilities. They're going to have, according to the research, their wealth numbers are much higher. Even if you have a college degree, your wealth is a fraction of a white person who did not even go to college. And a lot of times that is because they are more likely to receive an inheritance, or they're more likely to be the son or the daughter of a business owner. A business gives you an inheritance. It gives you a career. It gives you, a start. So how do we recover? I believe have higher incomes and higher savings rates. I believe that we should avoid materialism. I want us to avoid education loans. I know that we are very educated, highly educated, but I want us to figure out ways to get our education without going into the debt. We don't need it. We need to highly consider taking advantage of the community college system and moving towards having a commitment to education, but not to the name, and a commitment to getting skill and getting, the talent that you need and the information that you need, but to not getting in debt, and to not see college as an image builder, but to see college as this is your way to make your greatest contribution to the planet. I believe that we need to recover from our wealth discrimination and the things that have happened to our ancestors that has become our inheritance has been lacking. Because of this, I feel that we need to avoid debts. We need to avoid car payments. We need to avoid paying payments for cars and paying interest. And then we need to make a commitment to saving up for a car and riding the bus. I know that now we have so many people who feel like every member of the house has to have a car. But think about how much that's costing you. I was speaking to a young person the other day, and they were saying, I got to get a house. I got to get a house because I'm just throwing away money with this rent. But they have a car payment too. And they don't see that as throwing away money, with the car payment, but they see throwing away money, with the rent, but at least the car payment is very similar to having a mortgage on a house. At least you're just, you're financing it, but you will hopefully own it at the end. But we don't see that correlation. Yes. So we need to make sure that we take advantage of saving. Like saving has to be just a part of our lifestyle. Save for your down payment on your home purchase. Just because they say you only need $1,000 down to get this government loan, we have to think about it. Who wins when you only put $1,000 down on your house? You don't own your house. You don't own any of your house. So if you wait and purchase it when you have money to put down on your house, at least you own part of your house. Shoot for at least 20%, so then you'll get a better interest rate. Delayed gratification is what's going to help us recover. We have to outsmart a system that is designed to make money off you. We're getting excited, about $1,000 down on a government loan, and then the government charges you a premium for only putting $1,000 down. They love that program, and it's fully collateralized. They will take your house back. Miss enough payments and see who owns that house. So make sure that you're secure in your financial situation before we make these purchases. Leave an inheritance. Think about generational wealth. Consider an appropriate life insurance policy if you don't have any savings accumulated. While you're young, life insurance could be a good way to make sure that you leave an inheritance, leave wealth, think generationally, not just from year to year, not just from day to day. And I know it's going to take some sacrifices, but it's going to take some sacrifices for us to be able to change this. And it's not fair. But we're going to have to make some sacrifices. We're going to have to change these things, or we're going to have generation after generation that is just broke and broke and broker. Somebody has to start with something. We have to, average people, we have to start saying that our children have to start with something. And then we have to be so disciplined that our children realize what it takes in order to keep it, or they'll waste it. Because most wealth is wasted within 2 generations. So that's why AfroEconomics has to be like a part of the life, your life, for the family's life, the 10 principles from legacy to determination, everything. And then the 10th principle of AfroEconomics, take care of your health. We're going to close this wealth gap by taking care of our health, by not having to spend so much of our money on paying for unnecessary things. There's some things that you're born with, but then there's some things that we just allow to happen to us because we're under a lot of stress. And they have connected a lot of the diseases that we have to the racial discrimination that many of us are subjected to. And if you haven't been, just live long enough. And unfortunately, it's going to happen. So, but how do we respond to this stress? How do we respond to things that happen? You got to take care of our health. We have to not fall into these habits and then just allow yourself to you're spending every dime that you have on self-medicating through unhealthy ways. We have to take care of ourselves. And then if you live below your means and you save your money, you don't have to stay at a job that you hate. And being happy at your job is going to automatically create a healthier environment for you. And stop giving our vote away. We have to speak our political demands. We need to stop party voting. And we need to we need to start voting as a people about what is going to help our situation in this world. What is going to help the Black community move forward? We need to be talking to candidates that are about these things, building up our communities, building up our schools, not about building casinos in our neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? Like we have bigger plans than that. You know, and even if that horrible thing happened and they do put a casino right in your neighborhood, how is it benefiting you? Are you just going in there as a customer, or are you making sure that your school has a new track, a new football field, and everything, because they're making millions every month, some weeks, and we're still going without because they're just pulling from us. And then we just love the opportunity to be entertained, and we have to move from it. And I believe that we have to stay as far away from the criminal system as possible, that we don't have a chance at wealth. Anytime we enter into the criminal system, it is over for us. That's how serious we should look at it. Because there's a lot of people who can go in and make some drastic mistakes with their life and they can recover, but most of them don't look like us. So we have to live our life as clean and as strong and as smart as possible and move as far away from everything's got to be fun. I just want to have fun. You know, it doesn't matter. You know, we have to think about all the things that our ancestors went through just to get some of the opportunities that we have. Ms. Cotman says, integration diluted the Black dollars. We don't have economic inclusion when we integrate it. Racism is a race that we don't play. We will lose by default. Isn't it the truth? Yes, indeed. Gary said, good evening, JB. That's right. Good evening to you. But these are, you know, some of the thoughts that that I've had, some of the research that I wanted to share. I don't know if a lot of this information was as new for you as it was for me, but it is important for us to celebrate and acknowledge our Black history by knowing how strong we are, knowing how smart we are, and knowing that each of us have a responsibility to make this world better for all of the people that come behind us. All of them, everybody benefits from our success. It's just that the U.S. hasn't fully grasped the power of the Black community, of how good a people we are, how intelligent a people we are, how ethical and determined we are. We built this country, and we have to recommit to ourselves and our own success that though all these things have happened, we are here and we are building it. And and this country is better for having us, definitely, and now we have to make sure that we're benefiting from being here. Let's take advantage of all. That's why I always say, whatever the tax law is, let's learn the tax law and let's take full advantage of it. A lot of the research shows that rich people benefit a lot more from the tax laws and the tax strategy, because there's a lot there for them too. The capital gains taxes are lower than the income tax rates and things like that, but you got to have some assets to take advantage of those things. So I'm not mad at you. I'm not mad at anybody that's rich, but it's my responsibility to get you there, to say that this is the system. Let's learn it and let's make sure that we participate in it and let's build it. We can build and we can make this country a better place. We should have pride. If anybody should have pride about America, it's Black people. We've been here. We have been here. We did all of this. We did this. We built this country. Listen to him. Look what Lincoln did in DC. In DC, he paid all those slave owners for all those slaves. There were slaves all over DC. And think about it. We need to know this history. And we need to know how far we have come. We need to know, now we got this. And let's take full ownership of ourselves and our families, and let's move it to the next level. I love y'all. Thank you. Thank you so much. And this will be recorded. It'll be on the YouTube channel. Thank you. How you doing, Ms. Perkins? Yes, we are. Ms. Perkins said, let's work together, and we are strong. We are indeed strong. Our history is our history, and our history is real, and we need to know that. We need to know our history, and there's so much more to it. Yep, and we're gonna get it. So thank you for the opportunity to share this information with you, and everything I share is always meant to empower you. Knowledge is power. Let's take steps. How do we do this? We do our best. We recommit. We recommit to saving and investing, not to spending. God bless y'all.